Mishima Heihachi!
He's the self-proclaimed King of the Iron Fist, and by far one of the most strongest men in fighting game history. It's Heihachi Mishima from the Tekken series. At first, I think some of you might recognize this guy as that one Mii Fighter costume in Smash 4, or that old guy that hangs out on the Mishima Dojo stage in Smash. So let me explain who this guy is. Heihachi comes from the fighting game series known as Tekken, which originally released in arcade cabinets in 1994. Heihachi is the father of Kazuya Mishima, who most might recognize in Smash, and is also the grandfather of his son, Jin Kazuma. Despite that, these three don't exactly value family as much as most people do, as all of the Mishimas absolutely hate each other. Why exactly is that, you may be asking? Well, allow me to explain. Now, the lore of Tekken is a bit on the complicated side, and a bit of it is too dark for younger audiences. So to summarize everything you need to know, Heihachi inherited his father's dojo called the Mishima Zaibatsu, and married a woman named Kazumi. She eventually gave birth to a boy that they named Kazuya, whom she loved so much. But after his birth, she started to develop a violent split personality that threatened to kill Heihachi if he kept going down a destructive path. At first, he believed that she was just experiencing some sort of weird illness and disregarded her advice, only to find out that this illness was actually genetic, because it caused her to gain otherworldly abilities that no normal person had. So in self-defense, he literally fought his wife to the death, and eventually feared that his son, Kazuya, had this same genetic illness that Kazumi had. So to make sure he wouldn't have to fight his son, he threw Kazuya off the edge of a cliff. At the age of 6! I'm sorry, but why couldn't Heihachi just have a wholesome relationship with his son like Bowser and Bowser Jr. have? Is that too much to ask for, Bandai Namco? We need more good father and son characters in video games. But of course, his son didn't die thanks to his genetic illness. But because of Heihachi's actions, Kazuya became obsessed with defeating his father to avenge his mother's death. Fast forward many games later, and Kazuya had finally defeated Heihachi. So just like what Heihachi did to him at a young age, he proceeded to throw Heihachi off of a cliff and into a pit of lava where he now rests. But of course, you can't just permanently get rid of your mascot, because somehow, for some reason, Heihachi will be making his grand return in the upcoming DLC for Tekken 8, thus retconning the entire Tekken lore as we know it. But today, Heihachi will be invited to compete against Kazuya one last time, as he'll be joining the Super Smash Bros. Roster. So starting off, Heihachi would be a heavyweight class fighter, just like Kazuya. And also like Kazuya, Heihachi will have some incredible super armor, meaning that he'll be hard to launch compared to some of the other fighters. Not only that, but he'd also face the opponents in a 1v1 match, just like how most fighting game characters do in Smash. He'd have 2 very low jumps and would be able to crawl. Well, I say crawl, it's actually more of a crouch dash. Basically, if you use this command input while crouching, Heihachi will perform a quick dash on the ground, which causes him to avoid incoming projectiles. But now, let's dive into his costumes. For Heihachi's default appearance, I decided to have him in his iconic appearance from Tekken 7, where he's seen with his trademark black gi. I know that some of you probably wanted me to stick with his younger appearance from the first few Tekken games, but honestly, I think this version of Heihachi is much more recognizable. First alt, he gains an orange jacket and a dragon shoulder pad. This references his default appearance in Tekken 7. For his second alt, Heihachi's gi turns entirely white, which references a costume he can get in a few of the Tekken games. It's also meant to be a slight nod to his son Kazuya. For his third alt, his jacket and pants turn a dark shade of blue. This references his player 2 color scheme from both Tekken 7 and the original Tekken game. For his fourth alt, Heihachi's gi turns brown, which references Heihachi's pet and one of the oddest characters in the entire Tekken series, Kuma the grizzly bear. For his fifth alt, Heihachi's jacket and pants turn a dark shade of purple. This references his player 2 appearance in Tekken 2. For his sixth alt, Heihachi's hair and gi turn entirely golden, which references a costume that he can obtain in Tekken 7. In the final alt, we'll have Heihachi's jacket and pants turn a dark shade of yellow. This references his default appearance in the game Tekken Tag Tournament. Now with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into the moveset. I'm going to be brutally honest with you guys. Out of the 56 movesets I've done up to this point, Heihachi's moveset is hands down the most difficult I've ever had to make thus far. And that's just because both Tekken and Super Smash Bros. Have two completely different styles of gameplay. You see, Tekken is all about knowing the space between you and your opponent, whereas Super Smash Bros. Is a game about location and traveling to your enemies to attack them. Not only that, but the big difference between these two games is that Tekken is a 3D fighting game, while Super Smash Bros. Is a 2D platformer game. Translating a fighter from a game like Tekken was a nearly impossible task that I put on myself. However, after a long period of brainstorming, I decided to look at Kazuya's moveset for inspiration. In Super Smash Bros., Kazuya has a different attack for every direction he faces in. Normally in Smash, each character has a different attack when they move either up, down, left, or right. However, Kazuya was a different case. The reason he was able to have different attacks for every direction was because it reflects the actual control scheme in Tekken. Almost all the characters within the Tekken series use 8 different directional inputs for different types of attacks, and it changes depending on which buttons you use. Not only that, but since Tekken is a fighting game, they of course have command inputs to use. So, similar to Kazuya, Heihachi will use 8 different directions, 3 additional directions when crouching, and 5 different command inputs to perform different types of attacks. So in total, Heihachi will have a grand total of 28 different types of neutral attacks. A crazy amount of attacks for a single character, I'm aware. However, just because he has so many different attacks, that doesn't mean that they're all entirely useful. You see, even though Heihachi has so many different ways to attack, he does have one massive flaw. Just like how Kazuya is in Smash, Heihachi needs to be up close and personal to even use these attacks, which can be a bad thing since his tactics will have to change if he goes up against a character who specializes in attacking from a distance. Despite that, he can still turn the tide of any match if he keeps the opponents close to him. If they're close, he can make some amazing comebacks by making combos that get the job done. But to make sure this video won't be an hour long, I won't actually be speaking on what attacks he'll be using and how they'll work, but it all will be on screen for you to read, so feel free to pause the video if you happen to have missed a step. So, now that y'all know this, let's go ahead and dive into Heihachi's neutral attacks. For Heihachi's neutral special, Heihachi will ready his fist and perform a fighting stance called Heaven's Wrath. Why is it called Heaven's Wrath exactly? Once he readies his fists, his front acts as a sort of counterattack. So if somebody happens to hit him from the front, he'll absorb the blow and launch the opponent pretty far. Despite the special sounding pretty reliable to use, it does have one pretty huge flaw. This move will only work if Heihachi gets hit from the front. It doesn't work if he got hit from behind. He shouldn't really have to worry about that if he's in a 1v1 match since he'll always face the opponent, but if he happens to be in a multiplayer match, then you should keep that in mind. Now for Heihachi's side special, Heihachi will ready his feet and perform the Raijin stance. As soon as he performs a stance, he takes a step forwards, which obviously causes him to move slightly forwards. I know this move may sound lame, but I haven't actually dived into the cool functions of this move. You see, after he makes the stance, he has 3 options for attacking. 1, he can hold the A button and perform a punch upwards. 2, he can quickly press the A button twice to unleash 2 quick punches. Or 3, he could press the special button again to make his punch a bit slower but also more shocking. As you might have guessed, his third option is the strongest, but it also leaves him vulnerable in a few ways. Primarily because the third option has a bit of start lag and a lot of end lag, more so than usual even. This may seem like another great move that Heihachi has, but I should also warn that this move does not work in the air, so make sure to use this move when you need to. Now for Heihachi's down special, Heihachi will electrocute his fist and slam it downwards. If Heihachi happens to hit somebody with this move, not only will they deal a large amount of damage, but it'll also cause a meteor spike, regardless if they were in the air or not. So this move is great for edge guarding purposes. This move may sound ridiculously overpowered, but I promise you that this move has quite a bit of flaws. First of all, this is one of Heihachi's only attacks that has very little super armor, so unlike his neutral attacks, he will be a little bit easier to launch. And second, this move has a lot of start lag and a lot of end lag, more so than any of the other attacks. And finally, for Heihachi's up special, I was stumped. Seriously, there's basically no attacks within the course of Tekken that can propel Heihachi into the air. So I decided to innovate one of his lesser known but useful abilities called Shadow Step. In the original games, Shadow Step was a unique way to dodge certain attacks so that Heihachi could go in for a surprise attack. Now for Smash, it'll mechanically behave the same way, but visually look different. Basically, Heihachi will step to the background of the stage, do a quick jump, and then reappear onto the stage directly above the spot he used his up special at. You can also aim where he moves by holding the special button and moving the control stick to aim, so you can still replicate its main functions on the stage. You know, now that I say it out loud, it actually sounds more like a teleport. Despite that, Heihachi will immediately go into freefall as soon as he reappears on stage. Now normally this is where I dive right into the final smash, but there is something I need to address. Some of you may be dreading at the fact that Heihachi has so many strong attacks. But what if I told you that he was holding back his true rage? Heihachi has yet another gimmick that reflects one of the iconic elements of the Tekken series: Rage. If Heihachi is over 100% of damage, he'll enter a once per stock mode called Rage. In this Rage mode, his attacks get increased 1.1 times, meaning that his attacks will hit much harder than before, which in turn gives him an advantage in battle. But there's another unique property with this Rage mode. If Heihachi either uses his down special or uses this command input while holding down the special button, he'll unleash a very strong attack called Rage Drive. When he uses his Rage Drive, he'll quickly punch at the opponent, hit them twice with an uppercut, and then uses his move called Dragon's Breath, which has a very great chance to KO foes at early percentages. I know what you're thinking. A mode where he gets stronger? That's a nightmare! But don't worry. Despite this sounding great, there are a few things to keep in mind. First of all, this mode is only activated if Heihachi is over 100% damage, so it will still be easy to launch compared to normal. Second, if Heihachi tries to use his Rage Drive 3 times and he misses all those times, then his Rage mode will automatically end, causing him to return back to normal. It'll also end if he uses the Rage Drive a single time on an opponent. And third, if he keeps getting hit by the opponent's attacks, his Rage mode will end a lot earlier. So overall, this Rage mode can turn the tide of any battle, but the Heihachi player needs to be careful when they use this mode, because if you're as reckless as Heihachi, then it'll come back to bite you. And now, for the final smash. Heihachi's final smash will be Cliff Ender. This will be a cinematic final smash where Heihachi will punch forwards a single time. If a single player gets hit, they'll be pulled into a cinematic. The cinematic then plays out with Heihachi holding the opponent unconscious near the edge of a cliff, where he proceeds to throw them. What you didn't know was that this cliff was actually a volcano, so as soon as the player lands in the lava, a ginormous lava geyser will shoot out, causing the cinematic to end. But when it ends, the lava geyser will remain on stage for about 3 seconds, which has a large hitbox and can hit other opponents who weren't caught in the initial cinematic, ending the final smash. This final smash references Heihachi's constant pattern of ending his opponents by throwing them off of high places. The stage of choice is the Mishima Dojo from Tekken set. Oh wait, that's already a stage in Smash. Hang on a second while I come up with something else. The stage of choice is Brimstone and Fire from Tekken 7. This stage's layout is reminiscent of the Colosseum stage in Smash, where it's a flat surface with no walls. Despite that, its main gimmick is that, periodically, some magma rocks will shoot out from the volcano and land onto the stage, which will damage anyone that happen to be too close. In the background, you can see a ginormous volcano that periodically will erupt and shoot out various magma blocks. As you might have guessed, Tekken has a lot of great songs for battle, so I'm going to be going with a good chunk of music throughout the series. In total, 12 songs will be included, 3 of which will be remixed.
話にならんわ。
And that would be if Heihachi Mishima joined Super Smash Bros. Whew! That was a lengthy moveset. Even though I had a lot of fun making this video, please don't expect me to talk about any other Tekken fighters for a really long time. This moveset took basically 2 months to brainstorm, and I can almost guarantee you that doing a moveset for some of the other characters from Tekken would take just as long, if not longer. Also a bit unrelated, but shout out to my friend Noah for helping me come up with the final smash. His idea of Heihachi throwing the opponent into a volcano was hilariously fitting for Heihachi, so thank you again Noah for coming up with that idea. Anyways, do you have a character you'd like to see be given a smash moveset? If so, let me know in the comments down below. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe? That way you can get notified when I put out any Super Smash Bros. Moveset videos. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.